Thanks for coming. This is always a great opportunity when we can grab Marty Cheney. So I'm so happy to have her here. I'm Bobby Lindenmulder. I'm the program director for our agricultural team in the Snohomish Conservation District. I'm also one of your WAVE directors and also on the leadership team for the Center for Technical Development. I do have some cards in the back also. If you guys have any follow-up questions or things like that as well, just so you guys have a contact from the classes today that are being recorded. Karina from Whatcom is going to help us with some of the chats and making sure, because we always get a lot of questions with Marty. So I'm going to give you her bio. Marty Cheney's with NRCS. Marty attended WSU and has a degree in range management with a minor in archaeology. She worked for NRCS, has worked with NRCS for 40 years. I've been at the Snohomish Conservation District 26 years this year. Marty has been a tremendous mentor for many planners through the years. And 40 years of knowledge is unfathomable in my time. It's awesome. It's supposed to be in Western Washington as an area specialist working with pastures, livestock, grazing, CNMPs, crops, wetland, prairie restoration, riparian areas, cultural resources, and anything else of the day assigned to her. She is the guru of the voodoo with the Waste Calc. And I've always have learned something from every time I've taken a Waste Calc class for forage. She's our go-to for forage and questions and pasture management. If you ever get to do a tour with her, jump on it. So with that, Marty Cheney.
Boy, how do I follow that one up? So do we have anybody here from Eastern Washington? Okay. I figured out some tools that will help make this work a little bit better in Eastern Washington. I learned some new stuff about the tech guide along the way too. So how many of you have used this before, these tools? Okay, so we have some. Yeah, Renee, you better raise your hand. So with the NRCS spreadsheets, the rule is if it's yellow, fill it in. That's supposed to be site specific to where you're working. And if you pick up one from someone else in your office and they say, yeah, I'll email you a copy, and you get it with some numbers in the yellow blocks, take them all out because they're liable to be wrong for your situation. Let's see. A few things are pretty obvious. Producer, county. The original file date is one that you type in and it will stay there forever. This date will come up for the last time you saved it, which is kind of handy because you say, is this the newest version or the next to newest version? You can check here, but you can also see when you started it. So a lot of these things have just been added over the years with, oh, I really need to know. And so we figure out how to fit it in. You can do a lot of different planning scenarios. You can do the current scenario out there, a couple of alternatives. Here's a place to keep them straight. You can put some notes in here like this is if we reseed pasture, something like that, increase production. Can you flip over? I said I wasn't going to do this. Can you flip over to peat forage balance for just a second?
Oh, yeah, I gotta stop sharing and sharing.
Oh, well,
It's okay.
you guys have these on your pages too.
Please hold. Sorry. My bad. Do that.
Okay, we're not going to do this very often.
And then I gotta share. Sorry, still my bad.
I should have had an extra half hour in my presentation for flipping back.
Well, I'm looking for the storage balance.
You were, that's right.
Was it?
Yeah.
There we go.
So scroll clear to the top.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that was a tough thing.
Newbie.
you see the same header up here. And this will repeat off of the waste balance page. So you go in here and you say, well, I just want to deal with the feed and forage balance, and that's if you come back for the next class after sitting through this one. But it will repeat all that over so you don't have to retype it in. And yeah, there's fancy ways to make it work better, but we have intentionally kept this thing really simple and really flexible, because we found as you make them, oh, well, I can make the computer do this bell and whistle or this, or I can do a drop down menu, and all of a sudden that starts restricting what you can do with the thing. So we keep it simple. Also know that if you do go to unlock the tabs because you want to make a note on the side or something, that's great, you know, not a problem, but make sure that you lock it back up, because there's formulas sitting in most of the white cells. And if you erase a formula by accident, by say hitting the cell and then hitting the space bar or something, then that's not going to do calculations anymore, and that could change your numbers all the way through the system. So you want to be real careful if you're unlocking the thing to change something or to change a format or something like that. Let's go, I guess, let's go back to Waste Calc.
Oh, it's working now. We got it.
Okay. We've saved 10 minutes, right? Okay. So we've got the spreadsheets, but basically this is what we're doing right here. We're looking at manure as a source of nutrients. We're not necessarily looking at the pathogens, all that stuff at this point. This is the nutrients. Can we use the nutrients on a crop somewhere or send them off site or whatever we're going to do? So the basic formula is you have the manure nutrients and you subtract the loss factors, or if you prefer, the retention factors. And you add in any additional nutrients, say from soil organic matter mineralization, or maybe you put some fertilizer on. So that's one side of the equation, and the other side is the crop nutrient needs. So what you're doing is balancing those two, but you're customizing it for the fields you're putting on, because the loss values you're going to use up here are going to be specific to your site, your field, the time of year. And of course, we're looking to apply these nutrients at the right time, the right place, and in the right amount. Bottom line, basic nutrient management. So starting out, pretty obvious type of animal. You can write in anything you want: cows, sheep, llamas, emus, cats and dogs, whatever. We actually have done these before for dogs. Yeah. And there are versions of this spreadsheet that have a version with drop-down menus that you pick the closest size and type of animal, and then it will autofill these numbers in here with kind of an average standard. And those generally have kind of a green background in these cells rather than yellow. And so that one, I haven't worked with it, so I don't know, how its answers compare to this one. I use this one because I can always follow the map that's right there. I can see it up there above this thing if I want to go see, okay, exactly which factors are adding together, subtracting, dividing, whatever it is. And I like to be able to see that to make sure I'm really getting the correct answer.
And this version is the one that's on the Center for Technical Development Resources.
Okay. Moving on to these sheets. So where do we go find all these numbers? This is in the Ag Waste Management Field Handbook, which is under the Engineering Division in NRCS. It's a national handbook. And we have our favorite chapters. We have chapter 6, we have chapter 4, which is this one. We have chapter 11, which is the loss factors. There is a dreaded ag learning course. It's called Animal Waste Management 2, I believe. And it is about 800 pages long. And it takes a long time. And is one of, if you can push your way through it, it's one of the best courses you'll ever take, because it makes you basically read the Agricultural Waste Management Field Handbook, this thick in a binder, end to end. But there's so much good information in there about basic manure management, use of nutrients, storage of nutrients, the engineering. It's all in there, and it explains it really well. But it is kind of an overwhelming course. Leave yourself plenty of time. So going to this first one, can you hover over these carrots? One thing I forgot to mention earlier, the carrots will tell you where to go find stuff. And so here, the AWMFH is Animal Waste Management Field Handbook. So we want to go to chapter 4. And in all capitals, says use the tables given in units per day per 1,000 pound animal unit. Because about 15 years ago, they said, well, why can't you just give me the numbers for my average cow and don't make me convert my cow to 1,000 pound cow and convert it back, or convert my chickens? And that's great if you have the animal they were thinking of. But, what's the chances? 1 in 100. So, and all of our spreadsheets, including some of the engineering ones, like dry storage, dry stack, is based on this 1,000 pound animal unit. So if you look at page 1 of the handout, you'll see that at somewhere on the page, hopefully I've gotten on each page where this information comes from. And we actually printed it off here both so we could be looking at 2 things at once, and so you can make notes on these things as you go through. So we have table, in this example, we've got table 4-8. And if you see table A is the cow and growing calf in units per day animal. That's the one, all my animals are going to be this size, and so they're always going to be this answer. B is cow and growing calf in units per day per 1,000 pound animal unit. That's an animal unit as an AU, which is what we use through all calculations, including the grazing calculations. So you always want B. If you use the other one, it will throw your answers off. And then if you look at table 4-5, for dairy, because there's been a lot more research done on dairy, you'll see you've got more choices here. We've got the B table, units per 1,000 pound animal unit, and there was an A table, I just didn't flip it out here. And you'll see here, they've done enough research that they actually break it out by pounds of milk per day. They don't measure milk in gallons, they measure it in pounds. And basically, the more milk you produce, the more manure you produce, because the more feed you're getting to produce more milk, and that's making more leftovers. So that's another question if you're working with dairies, you want to ask your producer, what's your milk production, pounds per day? And then we've got heifers, calves, dry cows over here on the side. And then, because they've done so much research, jerseys are different nutrients get pulled out of the feed, get expressed in the manure. And so you have a choice of, you know, if you have almost all jerseys, then you'd want to use the jersey numbers. Plus jerseys, being smaller animals, give less milk per day.
Can I do one quick check, Karina, are people able to follow along, or do I need to show this on the screen? Do they have it?
They have it, and they have the download,
Okay,
they're just asking if you're live filling anything out, but you're not.
Not unless we take the second hour for this. How long do we have for this?
we have 50 minutes for each.
I should speed up.
We
Uh,
have 50 minutes and we'll have a break and then we'll have the second.
okay, the volume also comes out of those tables in chapter 4. Animal numbers, that's pretty obvious. Count them up. Animal unit equivalent. This is that equivalent to 1,000-pound theoretical animal. And all of USDA uses this. It's a way to talk in common about a lot of different animals, a lot of different species. And if you're trying to figure out what, for instance, your chicken is worth, then back about halfway through this stack of paper, there's one that looks like this. Just a long column of numbers. And that is also down here on over here in the stuff you can't see. It says AU factor. Keep going. And so the basic calculation we use is 1,000-pound animal. So if you had an 800-pound animal, that would be 0.8 animal unit, pretty easy. But it's actually running off a formula, which is not a straight line relationship. And so what it does is it's got a curve. So the smaller animal has a higher basal metabolism. It's eating more. We know if they eat more, they poop more. And so that chicken is having more of an effect than its strict weighed pounds than, say, a percheron. And so what we recommend people do is, you know, generally round up a little bit. If you have a 4-pound chicken, pretend you have a 6-pound chicken, and I'll give a little wiggle room in there. And remember one thing about these are estimates. You're estimating the weight of the animal, we're estimating the feed intake, we're estimating the feed quality, we're estimating the losses from the manure. But what this is going to give you is just an idea of where you're starting. And then through nutrient management, we go in after the fact and do some fall soil nitrate testing, kind of as our report card to see how do we do? Did we balance? Do we need to put more on somewhere? Do we need to put less on somewhere? Do we need to put it on a different time of year? So this is going to get you in the ballpark. So when I see these come in for review and it says, I am balanced at exactly 100% nitrogen, it's like, yeah, right. What did you jimmy with to make that come out? And you know, it's if you're somewhere between 75% and 125% on the nutrient balance or the forage balance, you're in the ballpark. That means go out and take a look at the field, see how it actually looks, look at the soil test, look at the production of the field. So if you do the math, even our fancy to the power formula falls apart a little bit at these smaller levels. Your 4-pound chicken, it says is the equivalent actually of a 20-pound chicken. Yeah, maybe not, you know, round it down a little bit. So at the extremes, this formula doesn't do as well as it could. But all this is going to do is that's going to overestimate the nutrients. So you're not going to over apply nutrients with this. If anything, you're going to under apply nutrients. Okay, back to the first one. And can you give me like a 10-minute warning?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. So we figured this out, and then number of days grazing and confined, and you said, well, they're confined for half the day, you know, they're in the barn, getting milled, or I'm keeping them in there to keep the pasture better, and they're out the other half of the day. So now what do I do? Well, it's a percentage. Think of 365 days as the total. So if they're on the pasture 2/3 of the time, give it 2/3 of 365. And if they're on the pasture for 6 months in the summer and then occasionally in the winter, just do the math and make it work. But put it in the notes, because you're going to forget exactly how you did that. So put up there, I figured 50% of the time in the winter and 100% of the time in the summer they were on the pasture. And that, you know, they sell the animals in September, and so that's why the animals disappeared. Because with some of these things, especially if they're going into an equip contract, you may be coming back to this 4 or 5 years later and saying, what did I do? Or what did the previous planner do? So you do all this and you add all that and nothing happens over here. This is where your results are supposed to come up. And that is because you have to fill out these numbers first. Once you have these numbers all populated, then you'll see numbers pop up here. If you don't have any days in confinement, you won't get any numbers over here. And the way this is set up, if you wonder, what the heck is that? You know, how's this calculation working? Just click on the cell and it will show you the formula and you can follow it. So grazing, obviously there's no storage out there, and so there's no storage loss. So these are nutrient loss factors of things, as nutrients are either unavailable or volatilize off from the pile of manure as we go through this, you know, manure comes out, it breaks down, all those processes. So there is no loss here. We have retention values because it makes the math a whole lot easier. If it's a loss factor, it's 1 minus whatever in parentheses times, you know, and it's really hard to follow those formulas. So we just turned them around and said, we call it a loss factor, but what we're multiplying by is what's left. That makes sense?
And I'm annotating the people who are trying to follow you, so that's how.
You're talented. I can't.
It looks good.
Although I don't know how to get them out of the way. So I moved on.
Okay. Okay, so for confinement, we would, can you hit this carrot right here? We use table WA 11.5. So there are in the National Ag Waste Handbook, there are these tables, but it will be table 11.5. If it's WA 11.5, then those are the Washington tables, which are on the side of WasteCalc. They are not included in WSP, but you'd use the same tables. We just put them over here. At one point, someone said, I'm tired of switching back and forth, and put them in there. I said, yeah, no problem. That's how this thing grows. If you do have an idea, please send it to me. That way we can kind of update everybody at once, rather than you have one and you have one and you have one, and they're all great ideas, but we don't have them all in one place. And that is so if you pull up that table, they are actually currently the only place you can find them is on the back of the Waste Calc spreadsheet, because they redid our state website. We all had to do it nationally, and it was on the engineering page under the state engineering tools, And that whole section has currently disappeared, and so you cannot currently access the official copy of this. But we have the numbers, so that's what's important. So as you can see, you just kind of pick out whichever one is closest to your storage system. And we even have grazing at the bottom with 100%, just to remind you, those stay at 100%. These aren't yellow because they never change. You don't volatilize phosphorus and potassium, so it doesn't change. You don't denitrify phosphorus and potassium because denitrification has to do with nitrogen. So the yellow ones are the only ones you have to fill out. And so you just fill the numbers in here. And then for the denitrification, okay, so denitrification is what happens when you apply the manure to the soil. So nitrogen denitrifies when it's in saturated conditions. But because you've taken egg waste too, you know that we are not supposed to apply nutrients, not supposed to apply manure when the water table is within 2 feet of the soil surface. And so theoretically, you should never be using the water table at 1 to 2 feet below the soil surface unless you're doing a before example. Because that's too wet for us to be putting them on. You know, we wouldn't do that through nutrient management. So almost all of them should be using 85%. But if you have a really, really dry, really well aerated soil, then you're going to get basically almost no denitrification. So then you would use that 90%. Mineralization is as the manure comes out of the back of the animal, nice and fresh, and it needs to break down before some of these nutrients are available to whatever crop you're applying them on. Hopefully a crop, hopefully not bare ground. So the mineralization table we use is WA 11-9. And it's this little short one, and you kind of pick out, you know, is the manure fresh? Has it been sitting in storage for a while? If so, what kind of storage? Because the kind of storage will affect how much you lose during the storage and how quickly it mineralizes because of the conditions in the storage. You put that loss factor in, and then presto, the numbers will come up here. And the numbers will start to come down in the bottom to look at the balance with whatever crop you're looking at. For shavings and bedding, there is another spreadsheet that the engineers use for sizing waste storage structures. That's the one you should use when you're actually looking to size the waste storage structure. This one will give you pretty similar answers, but this is kind of for more, how big is the pile of manure if you're looking at spreading for nutrient management? You know, how many, it'll give you, that's the way we get the estimate of pounds of nutrients per cubic yard, you know, or per ton, or whatever our unit of measurement is out there. And then the reduction factor is, as you put, say, fresh shavings out there, they get wet, they get poopy, they pack down. And so your volume reduces just because it's all getting wet and flatter. And these factors are Midwest Plant Service has some good numbers. Or, you know, estimates of usually we use 0.8 for wood chips, 0.5 for straw because straw packs down more, breaks down quicker. So back on this mineralization, we used our table out of the Washington Ag Waste Management tables. And then there's another mineralization here. And can you get that correct? So here's table WA 11-9A. And do make sure you're always on the Washington tables or you'll get different answers. So that's this one. This is the one they won't let me change, even though I'd love to update the wording to make it more clear. Basically, if you have a field with a crop, the longer that crop has been in the ground, say a perennial pasture, and it's been producing roots and producing organic matter and pumping it into the soil. And thank goodness we're in the soil carbon now, everybody kind of is much more familiar with this concept. Versus say you're out there tilling your field 3 or 4 times in the spring and putting a short-term crop in that has almost no residue and tilling it some more and throwing it up in the air and oxidizing your nitrogen and volatilizing off. This is a way to give an estimate of what you're going to get out of that soil. Basically, these are nitrogen for free. And if you're in a soil with a lot of organic matter, like a peat or a muck or a soil, a silt loam soil that's productive, and so your plants are just producing more biomass, you're going to have more soil mineralization. If you are adding organics to the top of that soil, you're just pushing the whole system even faster. And as that material breaks down, it's going to come back and you're going to get the benefits. You put money into the bank account, and when it's time to pull the stuff out of the IRA, it's got to come out no matter what. And so you want to be able to kind of estimate this. And the kind of confusing part is because we had to account for putting manure on, you look at the balance and say, well, am I getting more than half my nutrients from manure? Well, okay, then, I pick whichever column it is. But in order to get that number, you have to put a number in here. So you're kind of chasing your tail a little bit, but if you understand kind of the concept of what you're trying to do, again, this is an estimate. If I go out there on my nice green long-term pasture where it's had, say, manure solid spread every year, I'm going to get a lot of nutrients out of there, and I need very few additional nutrients put back on. If I am looking at applying manure on a celery field, because I'm working with a farmer, and they do a lot of tillage, and there's very little residue after you take the celery out. There's going to be, unless there's a lot of manure going on out there, there's going to be relatively little coming back out of the soil. And if you look, you can see it a lot of times in the soils. They'll get quite light colored, so you'll lose that lovely dark color, and you're just getting a lot less out of them. You also look at the color of the plants. That'll tell you how much basically you're getting for free. If you don't fertilize your lawn, you go out there in the spring and you say, yeah, it's kind of green, it's kind of green, it's kind of green. And as soon as soil warms up enough to start mineralizing, which is the other piece of this, as you mineralize, it has to be warm enough for the soil bugs to function. All of a sudden, just overnight, it will go green. That's your free nitrogen coming out of the soil, and the soil organic matter. And if you have questions, just call me or email me, say, here's the situation. Which line should I use? And I can run through it with you. Yeah.
Just a quick question. I think you might cover it, but this says specifically for Western Washington, as does the water of the fire. Do we have these built for Eastern Washington and or the state?
There is another one That's a state table that basically says for each percent of organic matter, give it 20 pounds per acre credit. And that works really well in crop fields, Eastern Washington, where you have less organic matter, because you're usually working at those lower percent organic matter in the soil. And you're kind of in the straight line part of the curve. But like everything else in, biological systems, it's not a straight line curve, but that's kind of what this table is reflecting more so. And, I was in Western Washington, so that was the stuff that I was working on. But yeah, if you're up to about 4% organic matter or something like that, you can use that 20 pounds per percent of organic matter in your soil test as your place to start. Okay, you want this. So what this does, you fill these in and all of a sudden you've got all your comparisons, and it should fill in all your answers. It'll fill this in, and this is per field, not per acre here. This does nothing. I had a request one time, hey, can you put a place where I can park the soil test results so it's kind of all on one page? So I did, but there's nothing in the calculation. So if you don't fill it in, that's okay. If you want to just, attach what you have for soil test results because you want the whole report, that's cool. Pretty obvious, fill in what you're growing, field number, acres. There's a specifications page later on in here, a worksheet, and these will copy over. Production, we have production under a high level of management in Web Soil Survey, at least for Western Washington. Eastern Washington has not so much. They haven't really updated those in a long time. So your production should be the actual estimated yield, not the soil survey production. So, if I see these and it says, oh, it's in really bad shape and we're getting 5 tons of production per acre, it's like, I don't think so. Just call it what it is, and if it's a problem, that's one of the first places you want to fix. If you're trying to make this balance and this number is way low, your crop nutrient needs, because you got no crop, get more crop, and then you can use more nutrients on it and you can balance out. Okay, you want to scroll down? So this is where it spits out all your numbers, comparisons, what's in your stored nutrients per cubic yard. Because we did that because we do this form with a lot of small farms, and a ton. Well, what's a ton? Well, it depends on if it rained on it or not. But a cubic yard, everybody kind of has this visual of, and 3 by 3 by 3. I kind of know how much that is. And if you want to highlight that carrot there. Again, it's an estimate. Don't worry about making this thing hit 100%. Just put in what's there and see where you are. And, if it's way out of balance, see what you need to change.
I always do 2 of these. I do the existing and then the plan, just to see how far off they are to potential based on my manure goals.
Much time do we have?
You have 10 minutes for this one.
Okay, let's go to 590 spec. This is a specification sheet that can be attached to the back. Well, if you're doing NRCS speak, the back of our implementation requirement, because it gives kind of the report here. It will bring all this over from the previous page. And again, this does not do any math, but it's where you can record the pH. If you want, you can record the p-index rating to remind you, oh, my p-index is high when I'm doing my nutrient management. I can't balance that field for nitrogen, I need to balance it for phosphorus. For the application unit, we have, right in here. Are you putting it on in pounds? Are you putting it on in cubic yards? Are you putting it on in inches? Is it liquid? The nutrients will show up here for the solids. You can put an X here for the type of nutrient that you're putting on. And then from the previous page, you bring over your remaining crop needs. Again, use the extension fertilizer guides. Those are probably our best source. And remind yourself, and your producer, what are you balancing for? And then this is to show when nutrients should be applied. And you can actually put the amount. You want to say, and I'll put 30 pounds on in April and 60 pounds on in June. You can do that, or you can say, you can put manure on in, April, May, June, July, August. And the total should not exceed a certain amount per year. That's the annual crop need. But remember, you've got a growth curve going. And by June, in Western Washington at least, unless you're talking corn, the warm season crops, you had about half your growth by the end of June. And so if you put on 100% of your nutrient needs in August, but you've already had 80% of the growth, it's going to go somewhere usually downstream. And so you need to keep that growth curve in mind as well. And there are places you can go find your growth curves. They are in the feed and forage balance spreadsheet for Western Washington. And I had to work hard, but I found them for Eastern Washington. So,
They're not on here, but
yeah, they're there. Go to forage balance. Oh, to the side, to the side. And there. And so growth curve number. This is my one little bit of Excel magic I did with the lookup table. Took me forever. There's a page further back here that holds the growth curves. And so you can go look at them, or you can look at them on this page. They're easier to see on the computer. But these are the growth curves for Western Washington. So can you flip to the Word document now?
can you see that? I know I can stop and share.
You can stop sharing, share it at the top of the screen.
So the most important thing, to take nothing else out of this class, is always highlight the red carrots, because they'll tell you where to go find the stuff you need to fill the answer out. And if that doesn't work, call me. Okay, keep going down. So for Western Washington, here's the growth curve. Find them on in this same spreadsheet. And if you're in Eastern Washington, you say, but wait. And you go here. So I am in the field office technical guide. My Bible I live by. I am in section 2. And under section 2, I am in the ESD archive, ecological site descriptions, also known as forage suitability groups in Western Washington. See, there's my buddies down here. And then if you go to the actual archives, here they come up here. They're the archives reference only. That means that these were the range sites that I used a very long time ago when I was working in Clarkston as range gun. But what they haven't, and scroll down a little bit more. Okay, so we have MLRAs, major land resource areas, and you can see we've got E43, B9, B8, B7. What do these mean? Here's 43, here's 7, here's 9. So you can pick out the one that applies to your area. And then if you can scroll down again. Did I put it in here? No, I didn't. Okay, when you get into here, you'll have a Word document, I believe. And you read through it, and about, I don't know, page 5 or so, it'll say, and here's an average growth curve for a range site. You'll need to pick a similar soil. There's like loamy range sites, which are usually wheat fields now, and very shallow range sites, you know, which are the nice rocky ones with pretty spring flowers. Pick one similar to your soil because that's water holding capacity. And then it will give you in there a growth curve for that site. And what it also has is a local precip, slightly out of date, but not bad. And that, if you're using WSP, where you need to know your precip by month, your distribution for doing liquid systems, then that information is also in here. You know, keep in mind, this is general, this is planning, this is estimates. That'll get you in the ballpark. If you have a better source for precip distribution to use in the WSP spreadsheet, by all means use it. Okay, keep going. I got time to put straight down. Okay, Western Washington yields. Where do I find the things? You go scroll up just a tad. So you go highlight your area. Then you go to Soil Data Explorer and Soil Reports. And this is why we've got it all printed out here. And then scroll down. And you go to irrigated and non-irrigated yields by map unit component. You always want component because you might be on an inclusion soil under the map unit that, you know, you might be on a wet clay soil and the rest of it's nice and well drained, but you want to be on the right one. I generally take pasture and grass legume hay. Pasture was just done by multiplying grass legume hay numbers by 2.2. That's the conversion. We might get into that next time. It pulls up a report. And here you can see like, you know, the Cathcart non-irrigated 4 tons of grass legume hay dry weight per acre. And so that's with a really high level of management. So that's kind of your starting point, and then you evaluate your field. Well, how am I doing? How close to that am I? Keep going down. And you say, how do I do that? And you say, well, there's a pasture production estimation sheet. This does nothing for water quality. I can totally screw up water quality by putting 500 pounds of nitrogen on and have great yield. So this is yield. So you start out, you know, what's your potential yield under high level management, and then you evaluate these various factors. 1s are bad, 10s are good. No rules. You can have liners. You can change your answers. I usually change mine. Just answer the questions. And I've used this with producers before, and they actually like this because they can answer questions, and all of a sudden you're just talking about stuff. You're not saying you're a bad manager, it's just stuff. The ones that rank the lowest, if you start fixing those, you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, and you're going to increase production quicker. Scroll down to the bottom. Fertility is always the most important, so that gets counted twice. So this is how you do your estimation. And keep going. Is there anything left, or did we make it to the bottom? Okay, forage suitability groups for the growth curves. If you want to not go in through the spreadsheet, scroll down. This is that same site. So here's a report I just clicked on one of these and it'll give you the forage suitability group right here. And so then those are, remember back in section 2, there was a section for forage suitability groups. This tells you, I want number 2XS601, and that is in section 2 under 2XS, and then you can find 601, and that will tell you all about how to manage that soil in that area of Western Washington. Is that it? Did I make it?
Wait, where do you see this 2XX? I mean, I see it right there, but where is it corresponding?
It's going to be up under forage suitability groups. On this page, when you click on that down arrow, they will show up. Okay, I got one more page to get through here. Okay, oh look, I have it here. What do you know? This was so last week I put this together. Okay, so now I clicked on forage suitability groups and here's my 2XS. And then I would go over here and pick out my, I think it was a 601. So I click on my 601, keep going, and it will look like this. Yes, this is my 601, my moderately productive. Basically, not bad soil, probably on a bit of a slope and, pretty good water holding capacity. And then it will give you all of these interpretations. And here you can see, this is the 2XS right here. Again, it's a subset of an MLRA, major land resource area. Now am I done? I think I'm done.
Now you're done.
I didn't have time.
Awesome, perfect timing. So we're gonna continue this after the break with Marty for more of the forage stuff as well. So we'll be back in here. It looks like we had a break till 10:30.
And amazingly enough, it uses a lot of the same data.
Yeah. So round 2, after break, for those of you online, we're gonna end it and then we'll restart it before the class again. So we'll see you all back here at 10:30. Thank you.